Okay, well, a little bit about myself is that my name is Tricia, and I am with Strategic Practice Solutions. Prior to that, I have been with Performance Plus, and then in 2009, there was a name change to Strategic Practice Solutions. Um, Pretty much my career has stemmed where I had a dental assisting position, I had a hygiene position, then I had to make a decision whether to go into dentistry or into a different realm of it. And I had something that changed my life in that in one of the practices that I was with, we had various consultants come on board and they kept telling us about things that needed to be changed, but we really didn't know where to start, how to go about doing it, and it created a level of frustration. So it kind of put me on a venture or a journey to find out how and what is the best way to impact teams so that they're performing at high performance levels, and how do you do it so that it's fun. And I think that seems to have gotten away from dentistry a little bit. Another thing is that I'm a certified trainer in DISC, which is a process of understanding why people behave in the manner that they do. And just by tweaking the manner in which we communicate with them can change the outcome to become one that's more favorable. So what will you be learning today? Let's take a look at that. We're going to be taking a look at the traps that impede dentist owners from growing their hygiene department and even hygiene providers as well. We're going to look at the difference between a results economy and a time effort economy. And we're going to be looking at metrics that should be monitored in any dental practice. How additional knowledge can have a positive impact, not only on the practice, but on individuals themselves. And we'll be having a testimonial from a hygienist who went through the training and how it's impacted her life. And then how to go about obtaining a free assessment of the hygiene department. So in hygiene, there's many challenges that are faced today. And the most common challenges that we hear when we go from practice to practice, which a lot of you may be able to relate to, first one is the almighty insurance companies. This has become a challenge because it has changed the mindset of some of the providers. It's becoming more and more clear that offices and teams are becoming very insurance focused. They pretty much feel that if the insurance company doesn't cover it, the patients won't move forward with it. And they don't look at it from a different lens, a lens of if you can explain to the patient, educate the patient, have the patient understand what's needed, and build value, they will find a way to move forward with it. And then your only thing in the dental office is to help them identify how to cover it. A second thing is called business versus care, and this to me is huge. I see this almost in every different practice, and again, a lot of you can relate to this. You know, when I talk to providers, they always ask me, or I ask them, why did they get into the field? And always hands down, it's because they care, they want to impact lives, they want to cause a difference in somebody's life and impact it in a positive manner. And when you talk to them about business, it seems strange to them because it's not something that you learn in either dental school or hygiene school. You know, you're there to provide care to patients. So the thing that happens with the business and the care is that those two need to merge. If you have one where one overpowers the other, that's where the misbalance happens, and that's where things start going awry in the dental practice. So for example, if care overpowers business, you'll usually find a practice that's providing care to patients, but it's limited care. It's limited because the practice doesn't have the funds to supply the tools, the advancements in technology to increase the care of the patients, you know, such as lasers, or some doctors have CEREC machines, things of that nature that'll help the business to grow even more. So are they providing care to the patients? Yes, but it's limited and the business is impeding the growth of the care. Now, when you have business that overpowers the care, you'll usually find offices that are very structured, cold. It's all about the numbers, and if you talk to the teams, you might hear occasionally amongst the team members, oh, they just care about the almighty dollar. Oh, they just care about the numbers. They don't care about the patients. However, if you can create an environment where the business and the care are closely united together and they're on the same playing fields, you have a business that is operational, successful, able to provide the care, the tools, and the training so that proper care can be given to the patients. So I would say line item number 2 is a huge challenge when I do visit all the different practices. A third thing that we hear almost all the time is inconsistency amongst the providers. You'd be baffled about how many times we'll go into a practice and we'll put up a case study. We will have 3 or 4 providers give us a different diagnosis, a different treatment modality, and they're all being impacted by different lens. They're all looking at the case from a different lens. We also see a lot of times where hygienists will say, well, gosh, I recommended this, 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 and this. The patient was ready to move forward. The doctor comes in the room and says, oh, we'll just watch it, and just totally, not intentionally, but undermines the efforts of the hygienist. So I'm pretty sure some of you out there can relate to one of these 3 major challenges. So let's find out what are some of the traps that are associated with it. One is complacency, which we'll go into more into detail about. One is lack of leadership. 2 is limited knowledge and lack of measurements. And I put those 2 together because when you have limited knowledge, it's because you don't have information coming to you. You don't have a measuring system to base how the performance is. So therefore, you're running without any information. You're floating day to day. Fear is a huge factor, and we'll go into this more in detail. And then there's confusion between cost and investment. Sometimes I'll go in and doctors or hygienists will say, should I get this? Should I get the laser? That's going to cost me a ton of money. Whereas another doctor might take a look at it and say, wait a minute, that's an investment. So we'll kind of go over a little bit about what is cost and what is investment. So with complacency, if you feel or think your hygiene department is running at 100% capabilities and efficiency, you've already fallen into trap number 1. With all the advancements in science and technology, the dental field is forever changing, and dental practices need to change and morph accordingly. Trap number 2 is lack of leadership. If your hygiene department is left in the hands of a non-administrative team member with knowledge of how the business should be run and what metrics to measure, the practice is at a disadvantage. And I don't mean any disrespect to any of you that are listening out there, whether you be a dentist or a hygienist. It's just, where in school have you learned or have knowledge of the following? What qualifies a patient to have active perio? Who sets the rule? Who sets the procedure? Who sets the tone? What system does the hygiene department need to follow? So many times I'll go into a hygiene department with multi-hygienists and they're not on the same page, and they wish that somebody would just organize that for them and tell them what is it that they're needing to do. When does the practice need to add another hygiene day? Who's that left to? What do you look at when you're needing to add a hygiene day? And how do you present treatment in a manner that has the highest acceptance rate? Believe it or not, the way you can reword something, retweak the way you say something can make the greatest impact. And what percentage of the hygiene day should be from periodontal related procedures? Who knows this information? And what factors are associated with the increase in cancellations and no-show? How does the practice need to address and fix the problem? So if you don't have a leader in the team who's monitoring all this, how can they lead the efforts of the team? How can they unite the team so they're all underneath one unified system? So I have a case study. There was a practice when we did a free hygiene assessment for a practice that was located in Norfolk, Virginia, and we found that the recall system was only at 50% effectiveness. The hygiene procedures performed were about 80% prophy and 20% perio. Right off the gate, we knew that the hygiene department was underperforming. And the hygiene department's production should have been triple to what it was doing. The reason this was going undetected was that the team and the doctor owner had no clue that the practice outgrew the facility. Imagine that. All they saw was that the schedule was full and life was good. After utilizing our systems and looking at our assessment, the practice relocated to a larger facility, added a few associates and a few more hygienists. Oddly enough, not only did the hygiene production triple, but the associates production as well. Now, are all offices like this case study? No. There's different offices, different needs, different metrics. However, this is a good indicator that unless somebody is looking at systems and business metrics, there is no way for them to know that they outgrew their practice. So we're going to go into trap number 3. The third trap is also another huge factor. It's the lack of knowledge and lack of measuring systems. As we stated in the trap in the last story the case study, individuals simply do not know what they don't know. They can only perform to the level of knowledge they hold. Only by increasing the knowledge will you be able to look at things today, look at what needs to be worked on, and growth will occur at a substantial rate. So, for example, some of you may feel, or attending this webinar, that the hygiene department is doing well. That's cool. What would it take to make it better? What do you compare the department's performance to? Where is the department now and where do you want it to go? How are you going to get there? Some of you may feel that your hygiene department is underperforming. Where is it underperforming? Where do you start? How do you begin to fix it? There's others of you that are kind of in limbo. You know, you've kind of been told your hygiene department should be more productive, but you're not sure why. How do they know that it's underperforming? How do they know, how do I believe them? And then they just basically, do you want to address it, or are you just content with the way things are running? Are you complacent? For those of you that feel this way, I wonder what your outlook would be once you learn more about results economy and time effort, which we're going to discuss later on in the webinar. Some of you may feel financially stressed at this time and have heard that the hygiene department, if maximized, could reduce the financial stress. I know you're interested in how to make that happen, but where do you start? Well, first of all, you need to start by knowing where you're at today. You need to understand the areas that you're excelling in, and then you need to understand the areas that are needing improvement. You put focus in those areas, and then the performance goes up and the numbers go up. This is a thing that I tell everybody. Metrics should not be the means. It should not be the end. It is the way for you to identify what needs to be worked on. You do it when you take your temperature. How do you know you have a high fever? Well, because you know when the thermometer hits a certain point, you've got a high fever. How do you know what temperature to bake your food at? Well, it's in the recipe. And it's in the recipe because that's where they got the best flavor and the best product when they put it in the oven at that temperature at that time. The dental practice is no different. If you identify what the metrics should be and you set the standards, if you fall above it, you're overperforming, great to be there. If you fall below it, you know you're underperforming and you know you need to address various areas. We're going to go over that too today as well. What are the measurements that you need to take? So trap number 4 is a huge one, and it's fear. It's fear of going it alone. It's fear of not being able to go see things through. It's fear of losing your team members. You know, if you do this, they're going to get upset and then they're going to leave. It's fear of losing your patients. Oh my God, if we do something different, they're going to sense something's different. They're going to think we're high sales and they're going to leave. There's a fear of the cost in getting help. You know, I've spent money. Usually I hear doctors say this, I spent this money before and I never got a return on investment. How do I know this is going to work? How do I know that this program is going to be any different? And there's fear of going outside your comfort zone. Face it, we all go into our comfort zone because why? It's comfortable. Yet it yields the same results. So until you go outside your comfort zone, you'll get different results. If you're happy with the results you're doing or you're getting, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not happy with the results, something must change. Otherwise, you're chasing your tail. And the last time I checked, I thought that was the definition of insanity. The huge one is fear of failure. I look at fear a little different. I feel that the greatest barrier to success is the fear of failure. Fear has two meanings. It could be forget everything and run, or it could be face everything and rise. The choice is up to you. So after today's webinar, I hope to give you enough information to empower you, and then you will face everything and rise. But again, that choice is up to you. The last trap is cause confusion between cost and investment. So when you're taking a look at cost, the confusion comes in, we need to understand what is the difference. A cost is simply something that is expenditure of money and time and resources with nothing in return. An investment is an expenditure that has a strong possibility of return. So let me share something that I had to do. We annually partake in what's called the Nemitz trade show. We get a booth, and this is a place where we meet potential clients and talk to them and advise them of certain things that we do. So when we take a look at it, there's a certain cost or investment that's associated with renting out that booth. If I take a look at it and I say, well, I'm simply going to spend time with friends, build relationships, enjoy the trade show, and just get an understanding of what's going on in the marketplace, that might be a cost. However, if I attend the trade show and I say, well, I kind of want to see what's going on in the marketplace, but I also want to at least reach out to 2 possible clients that I can reach out to after the trade show and see if there's something that we can do to help out their practice. That now becomes an investment. If it's simply to have a good time, in the previous case, it would have just been a cost. So, which is it, a cost or investment? A lot of times doctors, hygienists face the fact of, should I attend that seminar? Should I have that consultant come on board? Should I attend that training program? Oh my gosh, the cost is this. Well, here's a few things that you should probably take a look at as you're researching it. Oops, sorry. One of the things is, will the additional revenue obtained from the investment exceed the time and money spent? Will you receive increased patient acceptance? Will you gain new skills and will eventually bring in the required new revenue? How long is it going to take you to bring in that revenue, that increased revenue after the training, the seminar, the book you read, or anything that you do? So if your answer is yes to any of these questions, then the money and time spent should be considered an investment. Usually, here's another key factor. If an investment is able to offer you a guarantee, that should make your decision easier, because a company willing to extend out a guarantee means that they stand behind their product or service and they have experience and great success. So by understanding the difference between cost and investment, you can better decide on how to spend your money, time, and resources when you're growing the hygiene department. So one of the things that I said that we were going to kind of go over is the difference between a results economy and a time and effort economy. And this is somewhere where the doctors can resonate to the most. A lot of times the dentists, they're working hard, they start the practice, they're working all long hours, and if they don't structure the business in such a fashion, they're what's called in a results or time and effort economy. So that means that if they don't put the time in, if they don't put the effort in, they don't have the revenue coming in. However, if they can design the practice where the other departments are producing just as much as the doctor is, they can start taking a back seat, take some time off, because the business is running without them having to be there. So if you apply time, which is the non-spatial continuum in which events occur, in an irreversible fashion, that's it. The past is the past and the present is the present. An effort economy is the result of an attempt and another resource to basically yield the results. So let's take a look and see how this applies. Every day you go in and you work on patients from dawn to dusk. You perform the same routine each day. Sound familiar to any of you guys? So some days it seems like you worked a little harder or you put in more time. However, at the end of the day or at the end of the month, when you checked your production averages, the same as the previous months. That is so frustrating. I've lived that world. I know you've lived that world. The moral of the story is that time and effort does not necessarily equate to results, and your mindset plays a critical role. Can you relate to this? Is your mindset that the practice rises and falls on your production? Do you feel the harder you work and the more hours you put in, the more income you make? You cannot afford to take too much time off because it's going to affect the income and the revenue of the practice. If you replied yes, or even a delayed maybe, then your mindset is that of a time-effort economy. The harder and the more hours you put in, the more income you will make. That is exhausting. An example of a results economy is if you bought stock that was worth $5 a share. Note this is not a mathematical class, so just bear with me. So you bought stock at $5 a share and you get 8% return in 5 months. You did not put much effort into it, and yet it yielded results. In a dental practice, when a single practitioner, the hygiene department, and having an associate are examples of results economy. The dentist owner does not have to be present when services are rendered, and the practice is capable of generating more in revenue without imposing more patients onto the doctor owner's schedule or increasing the doctor owner's work hours. If you want to grow your practice and you want to grow the hygiene department, you need to build it based on a results economy concept rather than on time and effort. Time and effort economy usually occurs when the hygiene department or the growth of the practice is left in the hands of a non-leadership role or non-administrative role who does not have the mindset to grow the practice. So let me give you another case study. This was a client of ours. His name is Dr. Robertson, and he contacted us back in June of 2012. Really frustrated. We went out to lunch, and I could see the frustration in his face. And he told me how he felt that the entire practice fell on his shoulders. As he's telling me this, his shoulders drooped down, and you can just see the look of despair. Not being able to take a vacation because most of the time the revenue he generated is what kept the doors open. Hygiene was at a break even. So as you can see, this really sounds like a practice that is running on time and effort economy. When asked why he's feeling this way, he was not able to validate with concrete facts. This is something that we find a lot in dental practice owners. Each owner gauges how the practice is doing by a specific item they are watching, such as they're watching collections as it compares to the previous year, their openings in the schedule. If there's openings in the schedule, oh my God, something's wrong, or monthly production. While this can prove helpful, it does not help the dentist owner identify why they're not growing each year and often places the practice in a vulnerable state if negative trends are not identified early on and turned around. So SPS conducted a free practice analysis to identify the pulse of the practice. Within a few weeks, we were able to quickly validate his feelings. Yes, the practice did fall on his shoulders. The hygiene department was running at just at base level. We provided him with the reasons and the solutions to quickly turn things around. In our evaluation, the practice had quite a few hidden potential posted below. So let's go here. So Dr. Robertson's hygiene department was underperforming and just breaking even. The practice was growing, however, this was masked by the fact that the dental facility could not accommodate additional hygiene appointments. The schedule was full, and Dr. Robertson did not realize he had a ton of patients in the recall system that could not get appointments. The practice's business team was understaffed. They were not able to handle the call volume that was coming in. So as you know, if there's a new patient calling in and it goes to voicemail, practice lost that call. Case acceptance was below 25%. So the practice was not effectively communicating with the patients to get optimal case acceptance. Usually what you like to see in case acceptance is that if it's a small case of under 1,500, you're looking at about an 80% case acceptance. If it's a medium case, which is usually around 1,500 to 3,000, you're looking at 65%. And then anything above and beyond the 4,000 mark is going to be probably a larger case, and it's 40% acceptance. The skills that are required for each one of those levels, so the more the case is, the higher the skill level is required for the case presentation. So let's take a look at some of the metrics that every practice should be measuring to see how efficient their hygiene department is running. I don't know if you want to write some of this down, so I'm going to try to go as slow as I can. First of all, you need to understand the number of patients that have been seen in your hygiene department in the last 18 months. The reason why this is important is that it'll tell you how many hygiene days the practice needs in order to accommodate that practice size. The second thing is the average number of new patients seen by the hygiene department as well. This helps to identify what is the growth, and then you can project out 6 months to 7 months out if you'll be needing to add in another hygiene day. Third is the efficiency of the practice recall system. I cannot tell you how huge the recall system plays a role in the growth of the practice. I mean, think about it. If recall is being worked at and it's 85% efficient or greater, hygiene is busy, and doctors pull their work from hygiene. So if hygiene is busy, then the doctor is busy. If the recall system is down, there's holes in the hygiene schedule. If there's holes in the hygiene schedule, eventually there'll be holes in the doctor's schedule. It's just one big vicious circle. So recall is kind of like the kindling in the fire. It keeps it moving in the practice. You also want to keep track of open time in the schedule. The open time is a good indicator of where the time is coming from, and then you also have to take a look at what's causing the open time. So if you see open time increasing more in the middle of the day and you see this repeating, you have to identify why is that happening. If you see that open time is happening at night or in the morning, then you have to take a look at the recall system. The next thing you want to take a look at is the number of patients that have had periodontal related procedures. In a practice, you pretty much want the periodontal procedures to be about anywhere around 40 to 50% of the revenue that's coming in. And that has to be an equal balance. So let's say the hygiene department is about 40% perio. You want to make sure that out of that 40% perio, you have either a 50% blend of SRPs and 50% 4910s, or you can even go 40% SRPs and 60% 4910s. That tells you it's a healthy department. The last thing is case acceptance. Out of all the cases that are presented in the hygiene room, you want to see how much is the case acceptance in that area. If the case acceptance is low, this is an area you want to put focus on and say, okay, how can we deliver the information better, more effectively, so patient acceptance is higher? I'm talking about Dr. Inez. Dr. Inez, he knew that his hygiene department was always underperforming when he had contacted us. He never really gave it a second thought because he was content. The revenue was where it needed to be for him to have a happy life. That is until his personal financial needs increased. He got married, came with kids, so that's a motivator if you ask me. So now he found himself in a situation where he's motivated and he wants to revisit his hygiene department. The only problem is that he wasn't sure of how to approach the problem. So the first thing we did, and I'm going to show you some graphs in a few seconds, is we did a quick analysis of his hygiene department and we identified the certain variables that were affecting the performance. As we stated earlier, it's important to analyze the current situation of the hygiene department so that you can identify its true potential and how much the underperformance is costing the practice. Second, we projected the results the practice would experience by addressing each one of the areas that fell short. So we were able to identify that recall was running at 72%. We're wanting this to be 85%, so that's one area you want to take a look at. The second thing is that the hygienists were not diagnosing periodontal disease properly due to confusion from the dentist owner, and about 5% of the revenue from hygiene came from perio. Now, I don't know if you remember from the last screen, we're wanting this to be somewhere in the vicinity of about 40 to 50%. And third of all, case acceptance on the few periodontal therapy treatment plans was very low. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to take a look at the scenario. So let's take a look at his current situation. His current situation is that the practice has about 1,300 active patients and he averages around, I think, 5 hygiene days per week. He has 13 new patients per month, which is a little bit on the low side, but it is what it is. And the hygiene department experiences a low number of open time, approximately 5%. So that's good. The fact that it's at 5%, that means that they've got their schedule totally filled. So let's take a look over here. In the recall efficiency was 72%. Average hygiene days per month is 21. The average hygiene days per week, about 4 to 5 days a week. And their percentage of perio is 5%, which is way on the low side. And their daily production is running around 674. Usually, you're going to want to see this somewhere in the vicinity about 1,200 to 1,300. Now remember, I'm only using the numbers as a gauge. This is where it should be based on the standards. Now once we identify that, we just have to figure out, okay, what are the variables preventing the hygiene department from getting or achieving a daily production of 1,200? The monthly production is about 1,500 and the annual production is about 179,000. Okay, so let's play around and take a look at some things here. Okay, little computer glitch. So what if we put focus on just the perio alone? Now, I went in conservative with him. I didn't do 40%, I didn't do 50%. But if we could take the practice from 5% perio and do 35% perio and keep everything else a constant, the controlled variables are the variables that we do not change. It's still 1,300 patients, it's still 13 new patients a month, and it's still 5% of open time. The only variable that we're going to affect through training is increased periodontal procedures. Take a look at the annual production. It would go from 179,000 to 432,000. Now, if your jaws are open and they fell to the floor, pick them up and close. This is what it usually happens when a hygiene department has a system to follow and everybody follows it. So let's take a look at another variable. If we also took a look at, in here, projection 2, the recall, and took it from 72% to 85% recall, and we kept the period 35%, what happens is, if you notice here, the average hygiene days per week goes up to 8. Because you have more procedures being pulled through the hygiene department, you automatically have to increase the hygiene days, and you also have to increase the hygiene days per month. So what happens is that practice that used to be 179,000 now has the potential of being 513,000. So the cost of the problem that's costing the practice is well over 400,000. So when you take a look at fixing the problem, and maybe fixing the problem can be anywhere in a couple of thousand to a couple of 15,000, you take a look at it, and if the return is 400,000, would you say that that is a cost, or would you say that that's an investment? Just saying. So when we took a look at the metrics, this is a frame that we saw earlier, you can begin to see why it's important for the leadership team, the administrative team, to keep a focus on these numbers. It's also really good to have the hygienists monitor their own performance, because like everybody else, if you're able to identify the areas that you're doing well at, and if you can be able to identify the areas that you need work on, you'd be more apt to work on them because now you're more aware of it. And remember, I always said, knowledge is power. Another huge item to take a look at is case acceptance. And what we've usually found is that case acceptance for a caregiver is really hard, because you care about that patient, but there's that fine line. If you go over it, there's that fear that you're going to jeopardize that relationship and the patient is going to leave. A lot of the reasons that case acceptance is affected, and we've seen it in almost every office, the first thing is prejudging. You judge the person if you know anything personally about them. If you know that they have a student in a child in college, or if you know they've got 2 children in college, you might say to yourself, oh, they're not going to move forward because funds are tight. You may judge the car that they drive. Or another team member might say to you, oh, we told them that they needed this so many times and they never moved forward with it. Then you already say, well, if it didn't move forward before, how are they going to move forward now? Did anybody ever think that we could present things in a different manner that the patient can relate to, that they would move forward with treatment? The second thing is our head trash. And that is a huge role. Is whatever goes in between our 2 ears, that affects sometimes the way that we present things. What I usually find in dental offices, where I usually know as a provider, they'll treat one person differently than another person because of something that they know about them. Another huge factor is not communicating effectively to the patient's personality style. We're all different. We all want information different. If you can learn how to present information in the manner that the patient would like to hear it, you will build rapport with them and they will understand the importance of it, and then they'll move forward with treatment, or the likelihood of them moving forward with treatment is greater than not. And then there's always that thing about philosophy between the dentist, the hygienist, and the administrative team. Again, that team has to work as a team. They have to have the same belief system. They have to follow the same system. They have to say the same verbiage. Because if they don't, the situation I explained earlier where the hygienist presents everything to the patient, patient's ready to move forward, doctor comes in the room and says, oh, we're just going to watch it. That becomes disheartening to the provider, and it breaks the trust of the patient in that provider. So case acceptance is huge. So what you've learned today are the traps that impede dentist owners from growing their hygiene department, the difference between a results economy and a time-effort economy, and the metrics that should be monitored in the hygiene department so that the practice has an idea of how it's functioning and where it needs to put its energies. So right now I have, I believe, Julie, are you on the line? I'm sorry, Julie, are you on the line?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Missing you, that's what I am.
I know. I miss you too. I miss our talks.
Well, Julie and I met, Julie, when did we meet? Somewhere around April?
Oh my gosh, yes. It was, yes, last April.
Okay. And Julie had gone through our hygiene training program with her office. And what we did is we learned a little bit about communication and how to better reach out to patients and talk to them differently, and making sure that the hygiene department was all on the same page. So when you're looking at that, Julie, what did you gain from that training and coaching program?
I mean, the first thing I like to always talk about is the communication. I mean, just the way I communicate with my patients in general now. I've been a hygienist for 20 years, and I mean, after I went through the training, I felt my ability to communicate with my patients just went to a whole nother level. I mean, it was, I wasn't talking at my patients. I was talking with my patients and, bringing them into the discussions, really feeling that I was making them understand about their dental care, just the trust. I mean, just really being able to, form a relationship with my patient. I think that, that was really key for me. And I think that just overall just having a higher standard of care, for my patients and just being able to provide them with the best treatment, I mean, is just, like I said, it's taken my patient care to a whole nother level.
And then as you were going through this journey, and I do stress journey, the training was the class training, and then the on-site coaching was implementing it into action. How did it affect your performance? Because you've got a dentist owner that's very much into numbers and performance.
Oh, absolutely. And, by using, I think, at performance level, by using just a more sophisticated and just detailed way of doing a periodontal screening, combining my communication skills and, with being able to explain to patients, look, it's not all about probing depth, being able to bring them into the knowledge of the more sophisticated way we're screening now, bringing in the clinical attachment levels, bringing in different points that they maybe were never aware of. And I think for myself, just, having my patients understand that and my case acceptance has been, I mean, me personally, has been around 99%. 100% definitely for periodontal therapy procedure recommendations. I really have been able to just, like I said, bring the patients, into this and include them and make them understand, look, this is about your health. And I think that, as far as my pre-appoints, I mean, I've noticed those have been, anywhere from 96 to 100% on a regular basis. And I've also noticed a really, really large decrease in my no-shows.
Awesome.
Just because I personally feel that, you know, by forming a relationship with your patient and giving that trust and getting them on board and making, you know, and being able to make them understand has just been, I mean, for me personally, has just been really, really rewarding and eye-opening.
And it's been my pleasure in watching you grow professionally as well. I'm so proud of you. So when you're looking at this, one of the things that we did with your office, and it wasn't, and again, anytime you launch any kind of system, there's always a little bit of pushback, but there's the hygiene tracker, which you are now able to see yourself. How has that inspired you knowing your numbers?
Well, the hygiene tracker for me has been a way that I can almost, you know, see how I'm caring for my patients. I feel that, you know, it allows me to see areas where I may need to improve my communication and improve my skills. You know, and I think that, you know, by not knowing and not measuring, you really have nothing to strive for, and, you know, you really have nothing to celebrate if you don't know. Well, and I just feel every day at the end of the day when I complete my tracker, it's a learning lesson. It's, awesome. You know, where I may need to improve, or, you know, again, usually it's just about feeling good about the way I treated my patients, you know, and celebrating personal triumphs, knowing that I cared for my patients the best I could.
Yeah, and one of the things that we thought too was when you get to see the number of patients, you know, sometimes when you're in the back and you feel patients are going to go up front and they're going to schedule, and this was in the very beginning, and then you learned that they didn't schedule. I saw the look on your face. You're like, what? They didn't schedule? So, so what it does for you, kind of, does it help you to revisit the appointment to see where you could have done?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you know, if I hear, you know, if there is a case where a patient, for some reason, you know, doesn't schedule yet, it allows me to, you know, sit down with, you know, the front desk, or like you said, replay the whole appointment through my head and say, okay, what didn't I do? What can I do better next time? What, you know, what happened here with this appointment? And I think that before it would just be like, oh, they didn't schedule, okay, you know, and it kind of out of sight, out of mind. But I think now it's just it's a learning opportunity.
Right. And as far as everything that you mentioned, that was the whole part of the program, was to empower you so that you don't have to have that micromanagement. And it seems, you know, it's been, and not because everybody's listening, but it's been my pleasure in working with you, Julie. It always has. So, but
it's been my pleasure working with you, Trish. I'm so appreciative of just this whole process. I mean, really. I mean, by doing, like I said, being in a hygienist for such a long time, it's just, I don't know, it's exciting again to go to work. It's just, it's refreshing. It's, you know, it kind of re-energizes me every day when I go home.
Well, I thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your experience with everybody on the webinar. And I look forward to seeing you at the office in sometime soon.
Okay, Trish. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Julie.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
I'm supposed to have another person on the call. Shannon, are you on the call?
I am.
How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. Shannon is actually an office manager of a dental practice that we have worked with also this year, towards the beginning of the year. Shannon, when did we start working together for the training?
The 1st of January.
Okay. And Dr. Castle is the dentist of the practice, and unfortunately he wasn't able to come on the call. But you and Dr. Castle work very closely together. Like, how long would you say that you've known that your hygiene department was underperforming?
I've been in the practice almost 3 years, and if I look back in the record, I would say at least 10.
Okay. And I know he's brought in other consultants and other training programs to try to work with the hygiene department, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then what were the results of those energies?
It seemed like at first, you know, everybody would be really excited about starting things, and then things get initiated, and then within a couple of weeks, everything would just go back to old habits. And I think a lot of it was because the consulting companies we were using were not local, and we didn't have Tricia there all the time in our face telling us, no, we got to keep on track here.
You're so kind, Shannon. So when you look at the training and the coaching, what did you see happen with the team? I know one of the things that Dr. Castle mentioned is that he saw the team come together and take pride again. Did you notice that as well, or did you notice something different?
Oh, most definitely. Everybody came together actually as a team. Before, our office to me seemed like we had a hygiene department, we had the doctor's end, and then we had a front office. It wasn't like we were a whole team that worked and communicated together like we do now.
Okay. And then as far as the results, because Dr. Castle is a results and numbers kind of guy, what did you see happen with the hygiene department?
Oh, our hygiene department just skyrocketed as far as numbers and understanding their patients. I mean, it's still growing, and I don't see an end to it at this point.
Now, when you look at your patients coming up front, how do they appear to you? Do they seem, without me leading your answer, what are you finding about the patients as you're approaching them with the treatment plan and the cost? Because a lot of your patients have to pay out, a lot of your patients do need to still pay out of pocket, right?
Correct. Yes. I'm finding that since we started this whole process, patients are getting educated more, and I think the more that they're educated, the more they accept treatment plans, and the easier it is to present it to them, especially knowing the DISC system that you taught us. Several of those factors all come together, and they circle around, and it helps so much by what the hygienists are teaching their patients, and the doctor comes in and reconfirms it. And then when they come up front to me, I'm reconfirming it again, so it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
I think pretty much everybody accepts treatment, unless there's a huge financial issue, but we try to resolve it.
So if a dentist or a hygienist came to you and they wanted to ask you what you thought of the hygiene program through Strategic Practice Solution, what would you say to them?
I would tell them to take the dive and do it. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I've learned so much from it. And not just speaking for myself, but everybody in our practice. I mean, there's struggles in getting used to tracking everything, but by showing numbers, and that, it's an encouragement for everybody. I mean, I really don't know what to say, Tricia. We love it.
Well, again, I know it's been a long day for you, so thank you so much for jumping on board and sharing your thoughts about the program, and much appreciated. Thanks, Shannon.
Not a problem. Thanks, Tricia. Have a good night.
You too. So, looking back at everything about the webinar, assuming that you haven't fallen victim to any of the traps that we mentioned earlier, and you're wanting to run your practice on a revenue economy model, and you see that training as an investment, you're probably finding yourself asking, what's the next step? So if you are interested, and this is something that you're not obligated to do, but it's complimentary, we come from a place where if you're able to identify the current situation, and if there is an area that is underperforming, the hygiene assessment will identify it. And if there is an underperforming area, we can tell you what those areas are and what you need to work on. So all you need to do, and I'll leave this up here for a while, is you're going to visit the website that's on the screen right now, and all you would have to do is put in your information, and then it'll send you to a link for the hygiene assessment. Just need to complete that out and send it in, and then we will go ahead and conduct the hygiene assessment and send you the findings. But I thank everybody for your time on this webinar, And I'll leave the screen up for a little while longer in case you want to go ahead and jot down the website. Have a good evening. Thank you.